welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show about authors, about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. We are on Facebook, The Writer's Dream. You can see us on YouTube, The Writer's Dream, believe it or not. If you have a question for us, please address it to the Facebook page. And today's guest is a repeat offender. Her name is Lois Kipnis. She has been with us before. She is the author of a series of lessons for K through 12, which teach an interdisciplinary approach to storytelling. This is what Lois talked about in her last show, but she has made a complete departure from her teacher role, and she has written a book called Without a Script about caregiving. Mm-hmm. And Lois, tell us a little bit about your background, because that always helps us to understand what you write.
Okay. I started as a teacher, a high school teacher of speech, drama, and English, and directed the high school shows. And after about 6 years, then I was a stay-at-home mom. And when I went back into the workforce, there were no more full-time high school positions for speech and drama. So I started to teach after-school workshops, weekend workshops, and eventually became an artist in residence, where I would go in and out of schools and work with K through 6, and then ultimately middle school and high school. And I began to realize then that I needed to not just teach acting skills, but I needed to integrate drama into the curriculum. So I started to pay attention to if they were working on mythology or fables or whatever the unit was or the theme, I would work the drama into that. And the result of those years of working as an artist in residence and integrating drama into the curriculum, the result really were the 2 books on improvisation and another book called Have You Ever? Bringing Literature to Life Through Creative Drama. And then, I think it was 1998 or whatever, grants that I had, 16-year programs suddenly were eliminated from the budget, et cetera. And an opportunity came along to be the director of arts ed for Friends of the Arts. And instead of being the artist in residence, I developed programs with schools, and I brought the artists into the schools. And then in 2007, I stopped working full-time. I'm not saying retired, because I'm not sure what that word means.
I think the word retire is a kind of a misrepresentation of, because retire means go to sleep.
Right, yeah.
And I think most of us
are still going.
I would prefer to call it transition.
Right. Yeah.
Anything but retire.
Right.
So tell us about your new book.
So then what happened is, at the end, when I finished in 2007, I was working on the 2 books on Together We Can Improvise. And I was in the last stages of editing it a few years later. And I said, all my life, everything I've written, even the one-act play, Things Can Always Be Worse, was based on what came out of the classroom and was for teachers. I said, I want to write for me. So I want to write poetry. I had 2 ideas for a children's story. I wanted to do some memoir, short stories. So I enrolled in a children's writing course at Hofstra, and then I started to go to workshops, first one at my local library, writing our stories, and then eventually workshops from Long Island Writers Guild. And I started to write. And last summer, I said, I have over 75 stories. I want to publish them. But I really wasn't sure where I wanted to go, and there was one theme that I liked, the internal camera and how we all see things differently, and I was going to do all those stories. And a writing colleague who ultimately published Without a Script, A Caregiver's Journey, said, you need to do the stories about your mom, you and your mom. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't think I have enough. And
why did they come up with that? Because you haven't even mentioned your mother yet, as far as your writing.
What happened is, in the workshops, the writing workshops, basically the facilitator gives a prompt, and you write to that prompt. The next week you read what you wrote, critique, whatever. And apparently, many of the stories I had written were about me and my mom. And without realizing it, I had been telling our story all along. Because even if the prompt was, is it ever permissible to tell a lie? I wrote letters back and forth to my mom, probably the last year she was really good, at her age 90. And they were letters back and forth, but they addressed the aging process, you know. So that the prompts, I kept writing without realizing it, stories. There was a prompt, you know, who is your hero? And I wrote a wonderful story, My Mom, My Idol. It was the last of her days in the apartment. So without realizing it, I had been writing the stories. And when I went and gathered all those stories together, I realized, oh my gosh. The thing about Without a Script, A Caregiver's Journey, is it's not a straight narrative. There are poems. It's a collection, really, a collection of poems, stories, vignettes,
It's
letters.
without a script.
Without a script. That's what it is. What it does is capture the roller coaster of emotions as my mom and I set forth on this journey. No
So
script.
where does it start? At what point in your mother's life?
It starts actually at that point where she had just come to New York. She was 90 years old. She got a ride to Connecticut, came to us, and we celebrated her 90th. And it starts with letters back and forth, comic letters, really. And we were back and forth, and it addressed the aging. And then it moves to a story. She's still in her apartment. And then there's poetry interspersed. I had a dream one night, so I wrote it as a fantasy dream, and then it takes it right through. She is still at 96. She's in a nursing home, but our story is not done yet.
Yes.
You know, and for me, I had no understudy in the wing either. So it captures the whole roller coaster of emotions. And the stories, they're funny, they're sad, they're funny.
Yeah, I had my parents for a very long time as well, and it certainly is a journey. By the time my father died, he was my best friend. And I think we live in a culture that does not really tap into the incredible wisdom that people have if they live long enough.
Right, yeah. You know,
Would you like to read something from it?
Well, yeah, I will. The other thing is that I think what's important about the book is that it is not a how-to. It's not a how-to book. It's more, how did this happen? Where did this come from? And what do I do now? And that's why I think the whole theme of improvising, you know, because that's what we're doing. It's okay, every day is different. Every case is different. Every moment is different.
Every person is different.
Every person is different. And, you know, it's kind of, all right, let me step into the shoes this day and let me see what's going on and how can I solve this and what's the possibilities here? Where can we go from here? So that's what happens. But, I mean, just to give you a flavor of the book, what happened is I started to put together all the stories. And I think I was a little overwhelmed by the fact that, oh my gosh, there was some order to this. There were a few voids, and so I wrote 2 stories to fill those voids. And then one story, I just have to tell you, wrote itself. Last summer, she went into 5 days of confusion from acute dehydration. And I went every day, and we play Uno, card game. That's our thing. And every day she'd keep dozing off, and I would just sit and write the dialogue. Or if we didn't get the dialogue, she didn't doze, I would write it. And that whole story, the 5 days, it just wrote itself. I just captured all the dialogue. But again, which is what makes this book so unique, it's not just fact. I put it into a little bit of a twist so that even the facts are done with a fictitious premise. So that you know that the facts are there, you know that what's going on, the emotions are there. The book starts because I needed 2 bookends, and so I did a conversation with the director, just to give you a little feel for it. And I always start with a quote before each one. So this is a character in search of a toothpick. It's easy to tell the toiler how best he can carry his pack, but no one can rate a burden's weight until it has been on his back. That's by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. So it starts with me talking to a director. Psst, what? I need a toothpick. You need a what? You heard me, I need a toothpick. A toothpick? Something stuck between your teeth? No, I'm stuck. You're stuck? Where? In the middle of what? You gotta be kidding. You have no clue? Aren't you the director who cast me in the role of caregiver? Well, I don't like the role, but I'm proud of you. You've improvised well. I've improvised well. I wander aimlessly, upstage, downstage, center stage, stage right, stage left, round and round I go, and where this scene ends, I do not know. Next scene, same scene, no resolutions. And then we continue with this kind of back and forth conversation about the improvising and the feelings of the roller coaster. And he finally says, hey, slow down, the spotlight can't follow you. Spotlight, forget the spotlight, find me a toothpick. Any preference for color? That's not funny. And speaking of funny, what kind of play is this? A comedy, tragedy, farce, melodrama? Theater of the absurd? Maybe it's a tragic comedy, or is it a comic tragedy? Every day it's a bit of each. One thing's for sure, it's not a musical. Ain't nobody singing here. Wait, I think I found a toothpick. Is this okay? Is it okay? What do you think I'm doing? Testing a cake for its doneness? And it goes on and ends with, you tell me if you think it's big enough to hold together a triple-decker sandwich so that I, the overcooked, crumbling bacon in the middle, do not fall out. So that's what starts it. And then, of course, you know, it moves through poetry. It moves, I think the hard part was the day I had to put her in a nursing home. You know,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
I wrote a caregiver's prayer. I don't know, could I read just that? A short poem?
Read whatever you
Okay.
feel comfortable with.
I just, the point at which I had to decide that she had to go into the nursing home, I think was a very difficult one. I probably should have called this an aging person's prayer, but it's called the caregiver's prayer. Our wishes, strong desires with a minimum chance of fulfillment. Our hopes, strong desires with an expectation of an outcome. I wish I could run a marathon, but hope I can always walk without assistance. I wish I could travel the world, but hope I can continue to drive my car. I wish I could eat pepperoni pizza, but hope I can always feed myself. I wish I could read every literary masterpiece, but hope I will always recognize my grandchildren. I wish I could afford spas, massages, and manicures, but hope I can always bathe and dress myself. I wish my hands were silky, steady, sunspot-free, but hope someone will hold my hand when I need a hand. I wish I could remain ageless, but hope I age with dignity. I wish I could give my mom the gift of independence, but hope she'll learn to accept her dependence. I wish I could provide her with tools to fix her problems, but hope she'll learn to navigate with her wheelchair. I wish I could hold her hand as she did mine and let go and watch her soar, but I've clipped her wings. I've placed her in a nursing home. I wish I could reverse events, but hope she'll hold my hand and let my love comfort her. Our wishes, strong desires with a minimum chance of fulfillment. Our hopes, strong desires with an expectation of an outcome.
Did you write that?
Yeah, this is all mine. Yeah, yes.
Wow.
No, these are mine. That's why I said it does. You know, it's not a well in 1990. You know, or the other.
Yeah,
it's told through poetry that I wrote. It's told through these conversations with the director. It's told through. At one point, I did a fictitious piece where my mom calls me and has seen Brian Breezewave, and there's a show called My American Mom or Idle Woman, and she wants to enter the contest. So that's the fictitious piece, and it's just filled with humor. And it's our phone calls back and forth, but the facts are there because I pretend to download the form. So, you know, it's all of, okay, Mom, what's your greatest accomplishment? And so the facts are there. But it's all done and told through poetry and
Why don't you
prose.
read one of your poems?
Well, that was my poem. that
Okay,
was
no, that was beautiful.
that was one of the poems.
I thought when you introduced it, I thought that's why I
yeah.
asked you if you wrote it, because it
Oh.
sounded like you had quoted it or taken
Oh
it
no,
from something else
no.
just to use it.
No, anytime.
Okay.
Oh no, anytime there's the quote, it's
And
just.
I wanted
it's
to
just
make sure
strong.
that you
Yeah.
got the credit for it.
I did write that. I did write that. I
That
did
was
write
great.
that.
And also very much to the point.
Well, that's it. You know, the interesting thing is the response to the book based on that. You know, because I never set out to write a book about it and realized I had all these stories that, oh my God, told our story in such a variety of ways, I finally thought, well, it's going to appeal to caregivers. And I have to tell you, the response and the reviews that I have received from caregivers has been absolutely unbelievable, because what they've said is, I have dared I have dared to say things, to write things with such honesty that they were afraid to ever admit the feelings of guilt, resentment, and everything. But what's intriguing me is people, like that particular poem, people are starting to respond to it in terms of, oh, is this a dress rehearsal? And so those who aren't caregivers are kind of reading this with great humor, because there is humor, are reading it and realizing.
Having done this journey myself, one of the greatest emotions about it is the fear that you feel because you know that's where you're going.
Right, right.
That's where
Right,
I'm going.
yeah.
I mean, every time I visited the nursing home, it was, oh, may I have a quick death and not end up here.
I know.
And I don't really know when you get to be 90 years old whether you really think that way. I don't know. I was intimately involved in my mother's and my father's old age and death, and neither one of them ended up really in a nursing home. My father did die in a rehab nursing home, and then his girlfriend, because my mother died 10 years before, she was in the nursing home for 3 years, and that was excruciating because she had a massive stroke and was an extremely talented painter and did many things and could do nothing, and it was excruciating to watch her demise. So you feel, the guilt of not going there every day, and you feel the resentment of why do I have to go there every day?
Right, yeah,
And everyone I know who's gone through this.
But I have to say that, it's a book really beyond just caregiving because it deals with relationships, it deals with empathy.
Well, that's part of
It deals with, and I
caregiving.
think that, for me, one of the things, the hardest part about the book is I wanted to make sure that I also stepped into my mom's shoes. As hard as it is for me to see this wonderfully active, independent woman become dependent, well, what on earth is going on with her? I walk out of the nursing home, I leave. I'm then free to choose the rest of my day, and I leave her not who she once was.
No, I know.
And I think there was a great turning point for me. I was struggling with one piece, and a friend in one of the writing groups, which is why the value of writing groups really, and critique groups, she really heard my poem, my pain. I had written something. And she sent me later, she emailed me later, a poem written through the eyes of someone who had Alzheimer's. And it was just saying, please don't correct me, don't criticize me, don't try to even reason, just hold my hand. Just love me, listen, and hold my hand. And so I said, that was a turnaround for me. And I said, okay, wait a minute. I need to step into my mom's shoes a little bit more. And so I wrote two pieces, actually two pieces that I love. I wrote a forgive me, I had no script, a huge letter of apology that's in here. And then I wrote a story about a fictitious, the daughter is scattering the ashes of her mom, in the ocean, and finds a message in a bottle. And the message is written from a 95-year-old woman in a nursing home. And what I did with that letter is I put all the things that I felt my mom was feeling at that point into that letter. So it's really, I think that you read it at all levels, I have 40-year-old people have come to me because I'm starting to present and speak and read excerpts from it at places. And 40-year-olds came over to me and said, I'm buying for my mom. Because they're seeing their parents now being pulled, caring for the grandparents.
But I think that's so important that you are actually presenting to people the point of view of this person who's often looked like as a blob in a wheelchair who can't think or do anything else, and that's certainly not true.
I was just going to say, just the beginning of that letter it says, if you find this letter, I hope you're clever, courageous, and compassionate. I'm a prisoner, innocent of crimes. I'll provide clues to the best of my ability to enable you and your SWAT team to concoct a rescue plan. This is what I know. I'm in a waiting room, and the authorities wear white pants and white, green, or floral tops that define their rank. They have strapped me in a wheelchair and attached an alarm to prevent escape. How can I escape? I can't wheel this steel chair, and they confiscated my walker. They ask me questions all day long. How old am I? Where did I live before this? Who's the President of the United States? What do they think I am? A 95-year-old activist looking to assassinate someone? The only one I want to assassinate is my daughter who placed me here. Well, no, I really don't want to do that. I love her. When she holds my hand, I feel safe. But even my daughter won't appeal to the authorities to terminate my sentence here. How can I make her understand I don't want to stay in this waiting room until I die? And then it goes on and on. But I just stepped into her shoes and really wrote it through her eyes.
So let me ask you this. How does one, from the writer's standpoint, how does one go about putting this all together? What was the process that you went through to get this into book form?
Well, what I did is I laid out all the stories to see, did it follow this, order, and did the theme go through? And as I said, I plugged in 2 stories, and then I did this bookend with the director. My other books were all published by traditional publishers, the play, all the drama books. This one I decided to self-publish. And so what was wonderful is I used ProPress, Grace Bertano, who's a writing colleague, and being a friend and writing colleague, she really just guided me through, whatever, and then I found quotes to begin each.
Did you use
one
her
with.
company?
I
know Grace.
I did, ProPress, yeah, ProPress. I used her company, and it was a wonderful hand-holding experience, and the very funny thing is I have a children's story called Nana Banana, and it's been 2 years. I can't find a publisher for it. Well, it's a subject that nobody wants to touch yet. It's an 8.5-year-old girl visiting the nursing home, the Nana, for the first time. And it's wonderful because it's the whole life cycle, the diapers from young to old and comparing it to her little brother. However, I wanted to put that in here as one of the stories. And Grace said, no, it doesn't belong here. It doesn't belong here.
I guess
So
she knows.
that was really nice. And you know what? It didn't belong here. And so it's nice to have an editor and somebody who just kind of steers you in the right direction. So I actually, in August, decided to do this, and this was out by November.
Yeah. The process, once you have a solid manuscript, because I self-publish too, the publishing process is very easy. And then, of course, there's the marketing. How are you marketing this?
It's
Do you have
up
a
on
Facebook page?
I have a website.
Okay.
I have not. This summer, my goal is to become social media savvy. That is my goal for this summer, because I know I've taken a workshop with you, and it's wonderful, but it's like right now blank in front of me. I have to do it. So I've gotten as far as the website. It's up.
I'll give you some websites to post on then.